Lovely to have you.
Brilliant. No, thank you, Gwen. And can you guys see that? All right, I've lost you guys on screen, but hopefully you can
We
see
can
that.
see it perfectly. Yeah, thanks.
Superb. I suppose I'll start with a thank you as well, Gwyn, for the invite. Always keen. Obviously, today we're going to talk about players' voice, but I think it starts with that engagement piece. So the work that you guys are doing to put this on, and then obviously extending that invite onto me to come in and talk tonight about that kind of player's voice. So I think you've already touched on it there, Gwyn, and it is and it has been, I guess. Not only the kind of peak or pinnacle of my sporting career, but also the reason why I often get these types of invites, and I guess also a bit of a catalyst for me applying my kind of athlete voice or the voice of the experiences that I've been through from the moment on. But I think other than the pictures on the screen being a reminder now of how old I feel, they also serve, I guess, just to kind of give you guys an idea of that moment in time in London. So, as Gwyn said, we were the first British indoor volleyball team to qualify for a games. The home nation status allowed for that, so there was a bit of planning leading in. And the reason why I would say qualification is there were certain standards behind the scenes that we were needing to meet. So by no means was the journey any easier, but I guess it was more realistic in terms of Britain wanting a team at the games, but also needing somebody that was going to be in a team that were going to perform and compete as best they could. So I captained that team. I did for 6 years in the lead up to. Between England and GB, I probably had about 130 international caps at the time. And also you'll see in there the kind of, I guess, some of the wow moments. So the 15,000 people coming to every single game, 75,000 people at the opening ceremony. I think it is the absolute highlight of my playing career. But I think something I'd said before is it was a moment in time. So although this is where I thought I'd start, and like I said, the Olympics and my captaincy and my time with the British programme has been a catalyst for me to apply that athlete's voice. It was just one moment and one part of that experience that I have and that I came with and that I arrived with. So I thought I would tell you a little bit more as well about kind of, I guess I've written on there how it started, but I guess for me to remember this, I always think of three things. So for me, there was the swing ball. The second one was the caravan holidays. And then the third one was always about opportunities. So I think for me, swing ball, that's the best way I could describe me as a kid. So it was at my grandma's house in the garden on my own, that kind of thick plastic bat with the holes in, the ball on the string. I would stand there out in the garden on my own, throw it up, swing, miss, throw it up, swing, miss again, throw it up, manage to hit the ball perfectly, be celebrating as the ball whipped round, hit me in the back of the head. My family watching in the background, kind of laughing away at my persistence, my just curiosity around sport. But like I said, that swing ball mentality, that really summed me up as a kid. And I took that on into my sporting kind of life from primary school. I was a jack of all trades, master of none, as my dad would always remind me. So I did athletics, I did football, I did rugby, but I was never going to be Johnny Wilkinson. I was never going to be David Beckham. And it wasn't until I was probably about 14, 15 that I actually discovered volleyball. You'll be able to spot me on that picture there. That's my first volleyball coach with Stuart. And if the keen eye will also see on my tiptoes in the background, they're not quite as tall as that, but that probably brings me on to that kind of link in there. So Stuart with the hat on there, that's where the caravan holidays come in. And for those who know their caravanning, Swift Caravans are quite a big company, quite a big name, and they get manufactured really close to where I live. So there's a huge kind of caravan club scene on that kind of Yorkshire coastline, linked to the factory that's there, but also the kind of the availability to go. And it was that group, along with Stuart, they used to play volleyball every summer on their holidays, caravans, they'd go out, they'd play volleyball. And at the end of one summer, they came back and they decided they didn't want to stop playing just because the summer holidays were over. So there's a group of them that decided to set up a club in Hull, which is where I'm from. And Stuart went one step further, he said, "Oh, if you're going to set up a club, I'll set up a kids team." So he sent a flyer around to all the different high schools. That lands on my PE teacher's desk. I've taken that swing ball mentality, as I've said, and I've put it into everything. And sure enough, as I've walked into the PE office for a football at lunch or trying to find out what clubs are on that night, the PE teachers passed me the flyer and said, "You should go give this a try." So nobody in my family plays volleyball. Nobody down my street played volleyball. I'd never seen it. I'd never heard of it. But I took the flyer, and I've said to young people before in different groups I've spoken to, it was that kind of walk in and fall in love. And it sounds a bit dramatic, but it's exactly true. I kind of discovered a sport in this dusty YPI hall in Hull with a caravan club, putting things together once a week for 3 hours. But I discovered a sport that really suited me. I had that curiosity, I had that persistence, and I just happy to try anything and give it a go. So it was really through that caravan club and my experience, like I said, as a 14, 50-year-old discovering the sport brand new and falling in love with it from there. And the third thing, like I said, that I was going to talk to you guys about to try and think back to that kind of the early days of my career was opportunity. I think for me that kind of came probably from my grandparents. There was a big push. I don't think it was just where I was from, but that notion of just you've got to give something a try. You've got to get stuck in, and as things arrive and opportunities come up, then you've got to take them. So it's about putting yourself in the position to be ready to take them, getting yourself involved so they're arriving at your door. But ultimately for me, walking in, discovering volleyball, that just continuously opened new opportunities for travel. You'll see down on the left picture there, that was traveling with the England junior men. Because at the age of 16, I actually left home. So I'd started playing volleyball in Hull, quickly realised 3 hours a week with the caravan club wasn't going to cut it. So my then England junior coach, Mr. Trenham and Sandy, his lovely wife, they said to me, "Look, if you want to take this serious, move your studies to Sheffield. You can live in our loft." So at 16, I kind of packed my bags, moved to Sheffield, trained with that team, essentially the university team. Then at 18, I'd started to play for the senior national team. So that young-faced, or even more young-faced on the top left, that was me making one of my debuts for the England senior men in the World Championships in Sheffield. I'd actually done my A-levels that morning. I'd managed to get on my bike, get to the team hotel, and then get to the English Institute of Sport where we played our fixtures by the afternoon to make the match. But everything seemed to go from there. 18, I managed to turn professional. I played for 7 years as a pro, and then everything culminated in those images that you saw on that first slide. That kind of captaining the Great Britain team, first ever Olympics, home games, 15,000 people. It was absolutely phenomenal. But everything came from and came through those early experiences that I had. And I think, Charlie, you were asking me a bit earlier on about the why the Back to the Future slide. And I guess the one thing I would share with you guys is in the lead up to London, it was becoming quite clear how the landscape was going to change. And I think while we're on the topic of player voice, I think today one thing I do recognise that I did well was I was taking notice of all of these different things. I was making connections in other areas. I was shifting my thinking in order to be ready for that change, and also to get back, literally as it says, kind of get back to thinking about the future. The Olympics had been such a big part of my sporting time, my sporting life. Probably from the age of 11 or 12, I dreamt of being an Olympian. So to discover my sport and then to pursue it as an amateur, as a pro, as an English national team, British national team captain towards the home games, everything had been about the Olympics. And post London, it probably became more about looking to that future again. And again, thinking of tonight's topic, it was that evolution of me as a player, using my experiences, using what I'd learned from using my voice as an athlete, whether it was speaking to my coach, whether it was a captain on the court speaking to the referee, whether it was getting the opportunity to run player clinics and speak to young people. I'd started to kind of convert that. So I've popped up on the slide there a few things, and I've tried to find a few not too embarrassing pictures to go with it. That isn't me as a young child. That's actually my lad. That's the 8-year-old on the top left. And that's a young Kirk Pittman, if anybody's interested, on the bottom left as well. But I think for me, if I look now, where, like I said, from 2012, I'd started looking back and I'd started thinking about the future again. And I think whilst I didn't map out this perfect journey of this is what I'll do and then I'll do that and I'll apply myself there, there was a reality to it. I was coming out. I'd left home at 16. I left the island at 18. I'd played professionally for 7 years. So at the simplest core, what I wanted to do is put back into the sport. I was very conscious of all of the good stuff I'd have out of it. There's obviously challenges as always, but the challenges and the good stuff had shaped me. So I wanted to make sure that was going to be available to others. And then the other big one coming back, like I said, something I think I took from my grandparents was that opportunities. I was acutely aware that the only reason I got that London experience was a big part of it was the volunteers along the way, was Stuart putting on that club, was Keith and Sandy letting me in their house, the presidents of the clubs that I'd played for. So I was really keen to make sure not only did I kind of use that experience and vocalize it, but also then in my actions try and live a bit of that. So I've popped a few things of note up on there, like maybe more for me than anything, but kind of exactly or directly after London, I jumped into that Leaf Academy experience. So at the time that was a satellite academy for Volleyball England. And then also it was trying to set itself up essentially as a place where young people could go, they could train across multiple sports, volleyball being one of them, and then also get their studies alongside. So I kind of jumped straight into that. That was a huge learning curve. But on the bottom left-hand picture there, that was actually the Olympic qualifier that we hosted for beach volley for the Rio Games. So that was your Chris and your Jakes coming to play in what was the Continental Cup at the time. I acted as a director for that competition, working with Volleyball England. We'd built an outdoor beach. We kind of brought in all the staff and everything like that. And that was probably one of the first big opportunities for me to apply my experience, think about what I'd done, but also really scratch that itch to really try and put something else on for somebody else, and think about the opportunities for others. It's safe to say I absolutely loved it while I was doing it. So it's that classic. There was definitely something in there for me, applying myself, but that was a big one, and that's why that picture's up there. In terms of career-wise, that led me on to working with Scottish Volleyball as a kind of club and participation officer. I worked in several different committees and groups and different things within that role as well. And obviously alongside that, meeting people like Miriam and Gwen, that was through the Youth Sport Trust, the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust. And again, one thing I would say in reference to tonight and the offer tomorrow is you're in really safe hands with people like Gwen, with Miriam. They nurtured a lot of, probably at times, frustration that I had when I was meeting them for the first time as an athlete, heading into London and just after London. But the nurturing support, the patience that they showed that I didn't have at the time in order to affect change. So I think don't underestimate these opportunities to engage, but also please value the people that are structuring this, because I know it comes from a really good place as well as a really qualified position as well. The next one on there, that's actually my job at the minute, working for Sport Scotland. So on a day-to-day basis, I get to work with athletes and try and apply what I've learned and try and engage them to get their opinions to shape what we do. And then the few just on the bottom, before I pause and stop talking, maybe take some questions. One of the big moments for me post London was, and obviously with that mantra of trying to give back, was Richard Callacott, who was the chair of the BVF board at the time. He was in the lead up to Rio about 2015. Essentially rang me and shared his ambition to try and get some cash back into the sport, having kind of lost the funding in 2012. So I set about working with Rich as a performance advisor. That probably sounds a bit too fancy if I remember the kind of setting in Sheffield, meeting in a pub to chat to Rich about what we could do and how we could do it and how we could kind of really tackle and really go after some of the UK sport funding that may be available. But it led to applying for aspiration funding, which is about £70,000 coming into the BVF. I led that bid with the board, and then actually for the kind of post Tokyo cycle, I also led that bid to try and secure funding, and we were successful for sitting beach and a small amount for indoor as well, which I've really enjoyed watching the teams use that money, the BVF expand itself. It's got professional staff that is brought on board now through that cash. And my last role with the BVF, as I've kind of transitioned out of that, was the team leader role, working with the British Olympic Association for, if the team qualified, then I would work to kind of bridge the gap and support the kind of level of understanding between the BOA and the kind of volleyball teams in beach volleyball that would have qualified and almost did. The bottom two, I promise this is the last one and then I'll stop talking, but I've gone on to work with Team Scotland. So I was performance centre manager for Team Scotland in Birmingham. So that's a very much an operational role, but again, very close to the service provision, very close to the athletes. I was talk about transport and toilet rolls. That was kind of my job, just to make things happen. And then Team GB, again, a big thing for me, as I'd said to you guys on the call, was that wanting to give back, wanting to put back, but there was also an element of me, a passion that wanted to get back. So to get back into Team GB this summer within an operational role, kind of non-accredited in one of the preparations camps, that was really special for me, kind of personally and professionally, to be able to organise all the little bits that I know matter to the support staff and the athletes in that kind of final phase of prep. But also a big thing for me career-wise, like I said, from London, wanting to do something, wanting to make a difference. Know I had something to say and something to do, but maybe not sure how, where and when. To get back towards games and working with Team GB in 2024 was really special. I will stop and I will go for questions, Gwyn, but I thought I'd throw this out there when I'd seen what you were doing, but I guess there's always that for you guys, hopefully tonight and the experiences you can get maybe tonight or even tomorrow if you come back, it's just that thought of how are you going to use your voice, like what are you going to do, how are you going to apply it. I think it's important that we recognize if it's to be, then it's up to me, and you do need to apply yourself and take these opportunities in order to kind of get that change that you seek. I'll pause there, Gwyn.
You're muted.
Thank you very much. I was rambling on there, saying lots of nice things. Ben, thank you ever so much for sharing that story. And also, it's lovely to see you go on now and be involved in performance sport and giving back in that way. I have a question for you while everyone else warms up and gets their questions sorted. Is giving back is a really, really important part of you as a person and you as a player. And I know that not all athletes have that compulsion to give back. But what advice would you give to the young you, knowing what you know now and the power of the voice that you've had? What would you say to the young you as you were coming up as an athlete?
Oh, I think for me, Gwen, there's probably that I would probably encourage that curiosity that I had, and that kind of I was that why bird, if that makes sense. With the coach, I'll be like, well, why are we doing that, and what we're doing that for, and why is this, and what next? And I think I could look back and say, just maybe learn a bit of patience. That's something I've been desperately trying to do, and I've still not quite managed it. But do you know what? I think you just got to encourage. So I think if I was going to go back maybe prepare for some bumps and maybe have that, maybe a bit more resilience in a couple of moments might be the feedback I would give to the younger self. But yeah, I think for me that stay curious, stay tenacious. I think like I said, I've made lots of mistakes and I've got it wrong more times than I've got it right. But that energy you come with, that is what shapes a lot of things. So I think it's, yeah, maintaining that energy would be another one.
Great, great. Do we have any other questions for Ben? Excellent. Oh, yes. Miriam, would you like to ask Ben a question?
Which would segue nicely into my breakout group. So Ben, I came to observe some of your training in Sheffield prior to London 2012, and also ran a workshop for you about performance management and how to be the best you can be. How did you get the best out of your coach? I mean, you said you asked him lots of questions, but how did you get the best out of him?
Oh, how did I get the best? I think one of the big ones, Miriam, was that, and we learned this as a squad, and I definitely learned it as an individual, was that honesty. The honesty is the bit that speeds everything up. So I think in terms of how I got the best out of my coach is I probably opened up to a relationship where he could be brutally honest, I could be brutally honest, and we were surviving at times, but we were also thriving in an environment that was extremely open, extremely frank. Everything was an opportunity for improvement, and everybody had bought into that way of working. So yeah, I think that for me really optimized the work I did with him, and it wasn't just the head coach, it was the assistant coach and quite a few of the other senior staff. But yeah, I think it was that, Miriam, was my acceptance to having a really brutally honest and open dialogue, and then ensuring that I secured that with those people that mattered. That really kind of added fuel to the fire.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Ben.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you, Ben. And thank you so much, because I know, it's this time, it's very precious time at this time of the evening with youngsters around as well. So thank you, Ben. Brilliant. Great. Well,